I think it would be better if you left. My mother's feeling uncomfortable. She said it with a smile, the kind of smile you might wear when passing hors d'oeuvres or thanking a guest for coming. Her tone was polite, soft, as if she were doing me a favor. It didn't match the words. I blink. Not because I'm confused, but because something behind my eyes stings. She holds a glass of champagne in her right hand, her left resting lightly on the sash of her gown. It's the same gown I paid for, the one I helped her choose 3 fittings ago, when she said she didn't feel beautiful in anything white. I had told her she looked radiant. Now she's standing in front of me in that same dress, asking me to go. Not because of anything I did. Not because I made a scene. Not because I embarrassed her. But because her mother is uncomfortable. She doesn't say which mother she means. But I know. I don't say anything. Not yet. The room is lit like a hotel lobby in a dream, golden, glowing, too warm to be real. White tablecloths drape like snow over the round tables. Cutlery aligned like soldiers. Crystal glasses catching reflections of the chandelier overhead. Music floats from somewhere I don't remember what song is playing. Just soft piano notes drifting through a room filled with muted conversation and clinking glass. Everything looks exactly the way they wanted. Everything they planned. Everything I paid for. I turn slowly toward my son. He stands by the cake table, laughing at something a guest just said. He's holding a whiskey in one hand, his jacket slung neatly over his shoulder. He looks comfortable, at ease. And then, as if sensing me, he looks over. Our eyes meet. He doesn't come over. He doesn't shake his head in disbelief. He doesn't say, "Mom, what is she talking about?" He just looks away. I feel something hollow settle in my chest. Not pain exactly, just a kind of vacancy, like a room someone left the door open to. And now the wind is creeping in. I grip the edge of the linen napkin I'm holding, the embroidery biting faintly into my palm. I could say something. Ask for clarification. Smile through the discomfort and pretend it didn't sting. But I don't. Instead, I nod. Once. Just enough to be polite. Just enough to make it easier for her to walk away. And she does. Her heels click softly against the marble floor as she returns to the crowd of guests gathered near the bar. No one looks in my direction. Not even my son. Especially not him. I stand still. Right where I was. My fingers now tangled in lace. My shoes heavy against the carpet. No one knows. No one knows I chose the caterer when they couldn't decide between salmon and short rib. No one knows I paid the deposit for the florist when they said they were waiting for a paycheck to clear. No one knows the designer cake, the venue, the matching napkins, the imported lilies, the harpist in the corner. All of it, every inch of this perfect afternoon, was signed under my name. Under my accounts, under my belief that maybe this day would mean something more than what it now clearly does. I am not a mother here. I am a sponsor, a shadow, a placeholder for obligation. I don't leave. Not yet. I move to the far end of the ballroom near the back row of tables. No one follows me. There's a table by the window empty now. I sit, straight-backed, quiet. A server approaches with a tray of drinks. He doesn't ask if I want anything. He places a champagne glass down, barely making eye contact, and walks away. I think he assumes I'm one of the bride's older relatives. That makes 2 of us. I sip the drink. It tastes metallic, bitter, like something that used to be sweet. Around me, the celebration hums forward. Laughter rises in waves. Photographers dart in and out of clusters. There's a toast happening at the center, but I can't hear the words. It doesn't matter. I already heard the only line meant for me today, and it wasn't, Thank you. It wasn't, we couldn't have done this without you. It wasn't even, I'm glad you're here. It was, I think you should leave. That was her gift. And maybe the best thing I can do now is accept it. I let my eyes rest on the details I once obsessed over: pearl candle holders, silver trim along the runner floral arrangements. I stayed up until 2 a.m. arranging with the planner. It's all beautiful. It just wasn't built for me. I finish my champagne, set the glass down, and I breathe. Not a sigh, not a sob, just a long, slow breath, like someone exhaling something they've held in far too long. I smooth the crease in my dress and walk toward the door, not hurried, not sad, just deliberate. I don't turn back. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm done looking for a seat at a table I paid for, but was never invited to. They won't notice I'm gone, but soon they'll notice what else is. There's a photo I keep tucked in the back of my kitchen drawer. Its old now edges curled a faint coffee stain in the corner. My son is 6 in the picture, standing ankle-deep in a lake, arms flung wide as if the whole sky belonged to him. His face is lit up with the kind of joy only children seem to know how to wear. I'm just outside the frame. You can see my shadow on the water. That was always how it was. I was never in the picture, just around it. He was all I had, and somehow that always felt like enough. When his father left, there was no fight, no begging, just silence. The kind that settles into the walls, into the floors, into your lungs. My son was too young to understand, and I never made him choose sides. I told him his father loved him. I made sure birthdays felt whole, that holidays came with paper snowflakes and pancakes in bed, that he never felt the absence I carried in my spine. I worked 2 jobs. Clerked at the courthouse during the day, cleaned offices at night. I remember folding laundry at 2 a.m., with my feet aching, whispering the spelling words he needed for his quiz the next day so I wouldn't forget. I did it quietly. No one ever had to ask me twice. When he got older, I helped him with college applications, paid the deposit when his scholarship didn't quite cover everything, sold my car and bought a used one so he could have a computer that wouldn't crash mid-assignment. I didn't see it as a sacrifice. It just felt normal, natural, like what mothers do. He never asked me to stop, and I never did. He moved out after college, took a job in finance. The hours were long, but he called once a week, sometimes twice. I never told him I kept a notebook near the phone, jotting down little things to say, just in case I forgot in the moment. I wanted to sound light, casual, like I wasn't waiting by the phone on Friday nights. I was happy for him, even when he forgot my birthday. Twice. Even when Christmas became brunch instead of dinner. Even when he started dating her. He introduced her like she was already part of the family. "Mum, this is Elise." No warning, no build-up, just her. Standing in my living room, her scarf the same shade as the cushions I'd just reupholstered. I remember wondering if she noticed the candles I'd lit, if she liked the lemon bars I made from scratch. She was polite, but distant. She called me Mom more than once, even after I offered my name. I tried. I really did. I asked about her work. She worked in marketing. I nodded, said that sounded interesting, asked where she was from. She mentioned a city I'd only read about, somewhere with gated communities and names like The Reserve and Whispering Oaks. I smiled and said it must be lovely. She said nothing in return. The next time I saw her was at a restaurant. My son had invited me to dinner, said he wanted to talk about something big. I showed up early, wore my best blouse, sat at the corner table he always liked. They were late. When they finally arrived, she didn't greet me, just sat down and adjusted her napkin like she was preparing for a job interview. My son smiled at me across the table and said, "We're getting married." I clapped, laughed too loudly, said all the right things. Elise smiled, briefly. When the bill came, they both reached for their wallets. I paid. They protested weakly. I insisted. That was the beginning of a pattern. The venue needed a deposit. They hadn't decided on a joint account yet. I paid. The invitations were running behind. The calligrapher wanted payment up front. I paid. The dress shop had a final sale policy. The alterations were expensive. I paid. Each time I told myself it was fine, that I was helping, that I was still part of something. But something inside me began to dim. The wedding planner never emailed me. I wasn't invited to the bridal shower. The rehearsal dinner was hosted by Elise's parents, and when I arrived, someone asked if I was with the catering staff. I laughed, said no, pretended it didn't sting. It's strange how you can be so present in the mechanics of a thing, signing the checks covering the gaps, and still be invisible in its meaning. I remember asking my son once if he wanted me to walk him down the aisle. He laughed. "Mum, that's not really how it works." I smiled back. But inside, I wondered what part I did get to play. By the time the wedding week arrived, I had paid for more than half of it, quietly, without complaint. And still I received no itinerary, no seat assignment, no mention in the program. My name was on the contracts, not the invitations. I began to realize I was not being included. I was being used, but I said nothing. Because mothers don't keep score. And I wasn't ready then to believe he had changed. Or maybe I was just afraid I'd changed too, from the woman who raised him into someone he barely saw. The morning of the bridal fitting, I arrived early. Not because I was needed, but because the seamstress had texted me to confirm the final payment. Elise hadn't responded. I waited in the corner of the boutique near a tray of cucumber water and biscotti. I wasn't offered any. A staff member asked if I was a +1. I didn't correct her. I just sat, crossed my hands in my lap, kept my smile soft. When Elise arrived 30 minutes late, she breezed in like the store belonged to her. Her mother followed a tailored coat draped over her shoulders, sunglasses still on indoors. No one acknowledged me. The appointment went on around me like I was furniture. Elise laughed with the stylist. Her mother gave instructions. I paid the final invoice and slipped out without a word. Later that week, I got a group email from the planner with a PDF of the seating chart. I wasn't on it. I refreshed the page thinking it was an error. I zoomed in. There was a reserved table with both sets of parents labelled, her side neatly listed. Mine, empty. I emailed the planner. She responded an hour later. "Oh, Elise said you'd probably just sit wherever you felt comfortable." It wasn't a big deal. It was phrased so casually, like I was a drifter, someone who might pop in and hover near the exits. That night, I didn't sleep. I turned on the kettle and stared at the calendar on my fridge. Each square filled with appointments, deliveries, confirmations, all paid from my account. I wondered if anyone noticed that I hadn't once asked for recognition. Not once had I said, "This hurts." Because somewhere deep down I still believed that if I was kind enough, helpful enough, invisible enough, they might see me. Not for what I gave, but for who I was. But people grow used to ghosts. They stop thanking them for being quiet. They stop remembering that silence is also a language. The week of the rehearsal dinner, I was asked not to bring a guest. "Just to keep it intimate," my son said over the phone. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "You'll be sitting with Elise's cousins," he added. There was no mom and me table, no space saved for a photo, no moment planned to honor the woman who'd carried him through 2 decades of scraped knees and unpaid rent. I didn't expect a spotlight. But I hadn't expected a shadow either. At the dinner, Elise's father raised a toast. He thanked his wife. He thanked Elise's childhood best friend. He thanked the caterer for accommodating her shellfish allergy. Then he smiled toward our end of the table, our corner the one with 2 empty seats. And to our son-in-law's family, he said vaguely, "Thank you for everything you've contributed." It was so vague it hurt. I clapped. Because that's what you do. You clap for being erased. The woman next to me leaned in and asked, "Are you the aunt or the godmother I swallowed?" "Neither." "Oh," she said, brows lifting. "You look nice, though." I nodded. "Thanks." She didn't ask anything else, and I didn't offer. The following day, Elise's mother sent a list of last-minute needs to the group chat. Guest favors, charges for the head table backup umbrellas in case of rain. "Can anyone help with these?" she asked. No one replied. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged. Elise said you might be able to help. Her mom wrote, "We're a little over budget." I stared at the message. Then I tapped into my bank app, looked at the balance. Enough to cover it all, enough to fix everything. Instead, I closed the app, and for the first time in months, I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Still at the wedding rehearsal, I showed up on time, sat in the back, smiled when I was introduced as Evelyn, no title, no relationship mentioned. They'd told me to wear blue. I wore pale grey. I didn't want to clash with the wedding party. I didn't want to be noticed at all. But Elise noticed. She walked by me, stopped, looked me over and said, grey. Interesting choice." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because what could I say? "You're welcome. Thank you for asking me to be invisible." No. I just smiled, the same tight-lipped expression I'd practiced in elevators and waiting rooms, the kind of smile you use when someone steps on your foot and doesn't notice. Later, while they practiced the walk down the aisle, I stood near the back. A bridesmaid whispered something to Elise. They both glanced at me and laughed. It was small, quick, but not invisible. Not this time. I felt the flush creep up my neck, not from embarrassment, from something deeper, older, recognition maybe, that I wasn't just being ignored. I was being dismissed, deliberately. My son passed by and touched my arm gently. "Thanks for being here," he said. I nodded, but inside I thought, "You mean thanks for staying quiet, for not making this about you, for never asking why my name isn't on the program or the thank you cards?" It hit me then, not all at once, but like a series of quiet waves. They didn't forget me. They just didn't think I mattered. The night before the wedding, I stayed at a hotel 15 minutes from the venue. They hadn't arranged a room for me. Not that I expected one. But when I called the front desk to check in, the woman at the counter smiled and said, "Oh, you must be one of the guests from the Franklin party. Brideside or groomsman?" Neither, I told her. Just someone passing through. The room was small but clean. Beige walls, soft sheets. A single chair by the window with a lamp that flickered if you breathed too close. I unpacked slowly. Hung up my dress, even though no one would notice the wrinkles. Lined up my shoes. Placed a small travel bottle of perfume on the dresser next to the earrings I'd worn for his graduation. Tiny gold hoops. The only pair I ever splurged on. Then I sat, and didn't move for a long time. I had brought a book. I didn't open it. The silence in the room was different from the kind I knew at home. This one wasn't familiar. It didn't hum with comfort. It pressed in at the corners. I thought of calling someone. But who? Not him. Not now. He would be busy. Happy. Too happy to hear my voice and remember that I was alone. I picked up my phone anyway, looked through my photos. The most recent picture of the two of us was over a year-old Thanksgiving. He had one arm around me, the other on Elise's waist. Even then, I remember thinking I looked out of place in the frame. That night, after the pie, they left early. She'd said something about needing to get a head start on shopping. He kissed me on the cheek and thanked me for the meal. I remember thinking that kiss was habit, not affection. It had started changing long before I admitted it. The slow drift, the quiet exclusions, the way I was spoken to like someone reliable but peripheral. I'd become background noise. And somehow I had helped build the stage for my own vanishing. I pressed my forehead to the cold hotel window, watched the cars pass under yellow lights. I imagined being in one of them, driving past the venue, past the people I'd fed, funded, supported. I imagined never showing up at all. What would happen? Would anyone notice? Would the harpist keep playing? Would Elise ask if the final check for the wine had cleared? Would my son feel a chill in the room and wonder why? Or would he just smile and think, well, she probably had something come up? I sat back down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. The carpet was navy, with tiny white diamonds woven through it. I traced them with my eyes over and over again until they blurred. I didn't cry. Tears would have suggested I expected more. What I felt was something quieter, more dangerous. Emptiness. A hollowing that started somewhere below the ribs and expanded until I could feel it in my throat. It wasn't that I felt unloved. I felt unnecessary. And that's a different kind of ache. You can survive without being loved, but to realize you're no longer needed by the person you gave your entire life to, that takes something out of you that doesn't come back. I lay down, fully dressed, shoes off, earrings still on. I turned the lamp off and stared into the dark. At some point, a text lit up my phone. Thanks again for everything, Mum. Tomorrow's going to be perfect. No heart emoji, no love you, no question if I was all right. Just a transactional thank you. As if I were a vendor. I read it twice, then 3 times, and I didn't reply. Instead, I placed the phone face down on the bedside table and turned toward the wall. I whispered something into the pillow, nothing loud, nothing desperate. Just a question. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice? It wasn't a threat, not even a wish, just a wondering, a quiet test of weight, measuring my presence against the shape of the life I once filled. I must have fallen asleep sometime after that, or drifted. The next morning, I woke before the sun, my dress still hanging on the back of the door, my phone still face down, the gold hoops untouched. For a moment, I thought, what if I just stayed here? Let the day pass. Let the ceremony go on without me. Let the silence grow loud enough for anyone to hear. But then I thought about the florist, the final delivery, the deposit for the musicians, the wine that still needed to be paid before dinner service began. And I thought, if I don't show up, the whole thing might fall apart. The irony hit me hard, that even now, even at this point, I was still the one holding the thing together, still the invisible hand keeping their illusion intact. And that's when something inside me began to shift, not enough to make a scene, but enough to begin unhooking, undoing, letting go not for their sake, but for mine. The sun rose like any other morning. Light filtered through the hotel curtains in pale, indecisive streaks. I sat at the edge of the bed, barefoot, the carpet cool under my feet. My dress was still hanging untouched. My phone sat beside me, silent. For a moment, I stared at it. Then I picked it up, not to text, not to call, but to open a folder I had created weeks ago, labeled plainly wedding contracts. Inside were PDFs, invoices, and confirmation letters, deposits made, balances due, all signed under my name: the harpist, the florist, the bakery, the transportation company, the imported wine service that required same-day final transfer before delivery. Everything I realized still depended on me. No one had followed up. No one had confirmed final payment. They just assumed I would do it, like always. Like it was my role now to fund, to fix, to fill the cracks without being asked or acknowledged. I sat with that for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. I just felt done. Done filling the silences with grace. Done apologizing for existing quietly. Done being the insurance policy they counted on while handing out credit to everyone else. I opened my banking app, scrolled past the scheduled payments. One by one, I cancelled them. The flower delivery, the wine transfer, the harpist's final balance, the extra generator for the tent, even the overtime fee for the photographer. Click, cancel, click, cancel. Each tap felt like pulling a string free from a tangled knot I'd been twisting myself into for years. I didn't leave a note. I didn't call to explain. I just let go. Let them feel what it's like when I stop holding everything up. When the invisible hand steps away. I took a shower. A long one. Hot water on my shoulders. Steam curling at the corners of the mirror. I put on a clean blouse. Not the dress, packed slowly. Folded everything neatly. Not because I was in a hurry, but because I didn't want to rush. This was my moment, strange as that sounds. Not the wedding, not the toasts. This. The quiet reclaiming of something I hadn't realized I'd given away. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wait for anyone to ask where I was. They wouldn't not until something didn't arrive. Not until a delivery failed. Not until a vendor sent a payment declined notice. And even then they'd assume it was an error. Because they couldn't imagine a world where I simply chose not to show up for them. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Before checking out, I left the gold earrings in the drawer. I don't know why. Maybe to let go of something symbolic. Maybe because I didn't want to carry them into the next part of my life. Maybe because they were never truly mine. Downstairs, the lobby was quiet. A family checked in behind me, children clinging to suitcase handles, their laughter echoing like music. The clerk smiled as I handed over my keycard. "Did you enjoy your stay?" I smiled back. "Yes," I said. But what I meant was I remembered myself here. I stepped outside into soft morning light. The air smelled like rosemary and asphalt. I didn't go to the venue. I didn't linger near the parking lot to see who arrived. I didn't call a friend to say, "Guess what I did?" I simply walked to the rental car I'd booked the night before, drove south, toward the coast, no map, no plan, just forward. I stopped once for coffee. The woman behind the counter was about my age. She asked where I was headed. "Somewhere quieter," I said. She nodded like she understood. On the road again, I turned the radio off. I didn't want noise. I wanted to hear myself again. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I did. I thought about my son. I pictured him standing in the middle of the venue, phone to his ear, calling the florist, the bakery, the musician. I imagined Elise fuming, her mother demanding answers. I imagined the planner scrolling through her inbox, looking for payment receipts that never came. And I imagined the slow, dawning realization on their faces that no one had followed up with me, that no one had even confirmed if I was coming, that they'd counted on someone they had no space for. Let them wonder. Let them sit with that silence. Let them hear what I've heard for years. They may think I left to punish them. But that's not it. I left because I remembered I could. I left because I wanted peace more than a place at their table. Because sometimes love doesn't mean staying, it means choosing yourself. I didn't cancel the wedding. I didn't burn it down. I just stopped holding it up. The harpist never arrived. Neither did the second set of floral arrangements for the altar or the chilled wine meant to be served before the ceremony. At first, no one seemed to notice. The sun was warm, the tent was filled, and people were taking pictures in their pastel dresses and pressed shirts. A low hum of celebration settled over the crowd. Someone even joked that it was nice not to have music more natural this way, they said, fanning themselves with a program. But then the planner's assistant whispered something in Elise's ear. Her smile twitched, just slightly. She glanced toward the entrance, then toward the back of the field where the delivery vans should have been unloading. Nothing. She turned to the planner. The two conferred, hushed tones becoming sharper, more urgent. Her mother joined in next eyes, narrowing behind a pair of oversized sunglasses. Still no harpist. Still no wine. Still no flowers. Inside the reception tent, the centerpieces were bare, just candles in tall glass cylinders. Elegant, but empty. "Where are the peonies?" someone asked at table 3. "No wine yet," another voice followed. "I thought there was going to be music." The questions floated softly at first, like mist. Then they began to settle. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it later, from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. His voice cracked when he called. "Mum," was all he said. That was enough. But back then, in that moment, as it all was beginning to unravel, I was already gone. 100 miles south, sand in my shoes, coffee in hand, sitting on a bench near the water watching an older couple feed crackers to a flock of gulls. I wasn't thinking about the wedding. I was thinking about how the ocean smells different on the second day, less salt, more air. I was thinking about how nice it felt to not be watching a clock, to not be holding my breath for someone else's approval. Back at the venue, they scrambled. The planner called the vendors. Most didn't answer. The florist said the delivery had been cancelled. The harpist had taken another booking. The wine distributor had voided the invoice. Everything had one name in common, mine. And no one had checked. No one had thought to confirm. Because in their minds, I was guaranteed. Dependable. Non-negotiable. They hadn't invited me to sit at the table, but they assumed I'd still set it. That's the thing about silent women, they're underestimated, until the absence rings louder than the presence ever did. Eventually, someone asked the question. "Where is she?" Voices murmured. Heads turned. One of the groomsmen said I thought she'd be with the bride's family. A bridesmaid shrugged. I thought she wasn't coming. And then Elise's mother, voice taut, said, "Did she even RSVP?" That's when he stood up. My son. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm out. He just stood. Slow. Like something inside him was shifting. He took out his phone, walked away from the crowd, and pressed a number he'd called his whole life. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I needed him to sit with the silence, the kind I'd been sitting with for years, the kind that says, "You don't get to forget me until you need me." Later, someone told me he disappeared into his car for 20 minutes. No one knew what he was doing. Maybe trying to call the florist. Maybe trying to rework the music schedule. Maybe just sitting still for the first time in days. They said he looked pale, like someone who'd misplaced something important and only just realized it was never coming back. They moved forward with the ceremony, without the music, without the flowers, without me. The officiant cleared his throat too often. The air grew heavy. Elise's face didn't relax the entire time, but they got married. They smiled for pictures. They cut the cake. The guests stayed polite. But the silence hung like a shadow over everything. I imagined it as I watched the waves that afternoon. Imagined him standing there, his tie slightly crooked, not from stress, but from trying to fix everything too late. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no satisfaction in being missed. Only the ache of what could have been. Only the quiet grief of someone who loved too quietly for too long. My phone vibrated again. A text this time. Mom, I don't know what happened. Please call me. I turned it over. Didn't reply. Because this wasn't about punishment. This was about space. Mine. It had never been about the flowers, or the wine, or the music. It was about being erased, overlooked, expected, and finally choosing not to play the part they wrote for me. The next morning, I woke to light filtering in through gauzy white curtains. I was staying in a rental cottage near the coast, the kind built for travellers who want to disappear for a while. The bed was soft. The floor creaked gently with every step, and the air smelled of salt and eucalyptus. I didn't check my phone at first. I made tea. Sat outside on the porch in a sweater I hadn't worn in years. It still smelled like old detergent and a memory I couldn't quite place. Seagulls cried overhead. Someone nearby was chopping wood. The world moved forward quietly. When I finally turned my phone over, the lock screen was full of missed calls. Most were from him. A few were from numbers I didn't recognize, likely the planner, the florist, maybe even Elise's mother. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel guilt. I just breathed. There was one voicemail I chose to listen to. Only one. His voice was small, not angry, not frantic, just confused. Mum, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Everyone's asking me where you are, why things didn't show up. Elise is upset. I thought you were taking care of it. I mean, you always do. That was it. No accusation, no apology. Just that quiet sentence at the end. You always do. He was right. I always did. I thought back to all the years I'd filled the spaces before they emptied, paid bills before they were due, picked up calls before they rang twice, gave more than what was asked, and then some just to keep things smooth, unbroken, uninterrupted. And what did I get in return? Not cruelty, just forgetfulness, casual neglect. The kind that doesn't hurt at first, but over time turns you into a ghost in your own life. So I didn't call back. Not that day. Not the next. I stayed another 2 nights in that quiet cottage by the sea, walked along the water, ate simple meals, read the book I'd packed but never opened, laughed out loud at something for the first time in months. I don't even remember what it was, only that it felt like mine. On the 3rd day, I returned home. My apartment smelled like lemon oil and lavender. I always clean before I leave, like I want the space to welcome me back. I unpacked slowly, put things in their places. The earrings stayed in the drawer. The dress went back into the closet. Then I sat at the kitchen table and called him. He answered on the first ring. Mum. His voice cracked. I waited. Let the silence hold. He started to explain. The harpist didn't show. The flowers were half delivered. The planner panicked. Elise cried. Her mother was furious. Everyone had questions. No one had answers. He said it all like he was reading a damage report. But none of it was what I needed to hear. When he finally paused, I said only this: I wasn't invited, but I was expected. That's not the same thing. Silence. Then a breath. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I know. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't demand understanding. Because if you have to demand to be seen, then you're not really being seen at all. He asked if I wanted to come over, said they were unpacking wedding gifts. I told him no, said I was tired, that I had some laundry to do. He didn't press, didn't ask when I might come by next. We hung up quietly, and for the first time I felt no urge to call back, no ache to fix the space between us, because the space wasn't mine to close. It never had been. Later that week, a small envelope arrived in the mail, no return address. Inside was a thank you card, thick ivory paper, cursive font, printed signatures. It read, "We're so grateful for your support. Thank you for being part of our special day." There was no handwritten note, not even his name. I placed the card in the recycling bin without reading it twice. Then I brewed tea, sat by the window, watched the street grow quiet as evening settled in. I wasn't angry, not even hurt, just clear. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't floating between roles, not the fixer, not the financier, not the shadow mum who shows up, pays up, shuts up. Just a woman, in her home, at peace. My home is small, but warm. I've rearranged the living room, moved the armchair closer to the window where the morning light lands best. The framed photographs are fewer now, just one of my son, still a boy, chasing bubbles in a park. His cheeks, round his laughter, caught mid-air. I didn't take the others down out of spite. I just realized they were more about what I hoped we'd be than what we truly were. Sometimes absence makes space for truth. These days I sleep better. I walk more. Early mornings, mostly before the neighborhood stirs. I like the hush, the smell of dew, the way birds call out to no one in particular and still sound like they're being heard. No one really knows what happened. Not here. They smile when I pass, ask how I've been, comment on my plants thriving now with more time and attention. They don't ask about weddings or children or roles I no longer hold with both hands. And I don't offer. It's not that I've disappeared. I'm just not available for versions of myself that require disappearing. My son hasn't called in a few weeks. I used to wait for his name to flash across the screen. Now, I let the silence settle. Not because I've stopped loving him, but because I've stopped needing to prove that I do. Love, I've learned, is not always about showing up. Sometimes it's about stepping back, allowing others to choose what kind of relationship they're willing and able to build. He may come around, or not. That's his journey now. Mine is quieter, full of small joys. I've started baking again, not because someone asked, but because I like the smell of cinnamon on a cold afternoon. I found a book club at the library. We meet on Wednesdays. Last week we laughed so hard someone snorted coffee. It felt good, like remembering an inside joke with yourself. There's a new bakery down the street. The woman behind the counter calls me miss, and I don't correct her. Not because I care, but because it reminds me that I'm still someone in the world, not just someone's mother or someone's mistake. Just someone. I've kept the cancelled invoices, tucked away in a folder at the back of a drawer. Not for revenge, not as evidence, just as a reminder of the day I stopped performing worthiness, of the moment I realized silence isn't always submission. Sometimes it's resistance. Other times it's self-respect. There's freedom in being unknown, in not being measured by what you can offer, in waking up and not wondering who you need to become to keep peace. I'm learning that peace isn't something you earn by staying quiet long enough. It's something you choose, even when no one claps for it, even when no one understands. And that choice, mine, has been the gentlest rebellion I've ever lived. I don't know what my son tells people now. If he explains my absence. If he blames me. If he even thinks about it much. I suspect he's still confused, still piecing together the math of what didn't show up. Maybe one day he'll ask himself why. Maybe one day he won't. Either way, I've made peace with the not knowing. I'm not angry. I don't need an apology. I don't need a reconciliation arc or a tearful reunion, or a sudden burst of clarity on his part. I just need this morning light, a quiet room, a life that belongs to me, and the still steady knowing that I'm no longer standing at a door waiting to be let in, because I've already walked away, not from love, but from a version of it that required me to vanish. And I won't vanish again. They don't have to understand me. They don't have to rewrite the past. They don't even have to remember what I did for them. But I remember. And I've chosen to live in a way that honors that woman, not the mother they forgot to thank, but the woman who finally thanked herself for leaving.